So this is a function f of g of x for what function? F of x equals what? G of x equals what? Well, what's the first thing that happens to x if you're evaluating this? I give you a value of x, what's the first thing you do to it?
Put it into the x on the other side.
Again?
You put it into the x on the other side.
Okay, well, you'd write it down there, but once you've written it down, you're trying to get the value. What's the first arithmetic operation you would do to x? Okay, I say x equals 3. What's the first thing you do with that? Other than plug it in there where x is. Are you going to take its square root? Is there anything up here that says take its square root? Anything up there it says raise it to the 48th power? If x is 3, you're going to do something first. If I told you to evaluate this for x equals 3, you would be able to do it. Okay? What's the first thing you would do when you get x equals 3?
3 to the second power.
Again?
3 to the second power.
Yeah, you would square it, right? First thing you do with 3 is you would square the number. First thing I do when I give you x is you square it, right? Okay? Well, that's what your g of x is going to be, because what's the first thing that happens if you do f of g of x? You get x equals 3, then you evaluate g at 3, right? And the first thing you do is you square 3, right? When I give you x, if you look at this, you're going to square it. If you look at this, you're going to apply g, so g must be the squaring function. Okay? Right? First thing you do when you got a value of x here is you square it. It's the first thing that happens to x. You don't raise 2 to the x, you square x, right? The first thing in the expression f of g of x is g of x, right? I should say first thing that happens to x. You probably won't be able to read this. If you look at the video, you should. First thing that happens to x in f of g of x is g of x, right? You don't apply f until you've evaluated g of x. So if you look at the first thing that happens to your variable, you see that it's going to be squared, and you see that it's going to be g of x. So g of x has to be x squared, right? That makes sense? Okay. Now, once you squared x, what do you do?
You raise 2 to the x power.
Yeah, you raise 2 to that power, right? So f of x would be 2 to the x. Okay? Now, of course, the x you use in your f of x is your g of x. It's your squared value of the original x, right? which can be a little confusing. But you know, from substitution, check it out. If f of x is the 2 to the x and g of x is the x squared, then what's f of g of x? It's 2 to the x squared. Okay? Or we could write that also as f of x squared, since g of x is x squared, right? And f of x squared means that you replace x in the definition with x squared. So that's 2 raised to the x squared. So you can do it either way as long as you have the f and g order. Okay? Okay.